If you miss a Legislature Today radio show live, never fear. You can always watch it or listen online at GreatPlainsNews.com. That's our website, GreatPlainsNews.com. And don't forget, we're live Saturdays, 10 a.m. to noon, all across the state of North Dakota on the Voice of the Northern Plains, 550 K-Fire, AM 1100 The Flag, Fargo-Moorhead, and AM 1090 The Flag in the Pocket on the Legislature Today radio show. Now back to more of the program and your host, Dale Wetzel.
This is Dale Wetzel. This is the Legislature Today radio program. We're coming to you from the Peacock Alley American Bar and Grill in downtown Bismarck. We're sitting on the balcony above the bar and restaurant at the Peacock Alley, and we're looking out over the bar, and the bar is filling up quite nicely. This is a nice place to have a after-work drink or just to have a nice social occasion with your friends. And when they cook your steak here at the Peacock Alley or your piece of meat, they definitely know what they're doing, as the National Cattlemen's Association can attest. We're going to have with us this evening for our second half hour of the show, of the second half hour of the first hour of the show, we have Representative Ed Gruchella. He was a Democrat from Fargo. He is a former North Dakota highway patrolman. We also have Senator Kelly Armstrong, who is a Republican from Dickinson, and he is serving in his first session. He is an attorney and a criminal defense attorney. And both of these gentlemen have been involved in the writing of new penalties against people who drive under the influence of alcohol or drugs. And we're going to be talking to them about that and where this there is one primary bill that has penalties, increased penalties for DUI, and we're going to be talking to these gentlemen about that. First of all, Senator Armstrong, can you tell me what the current iteration of the bill does in terms of penalizing folks for DUI?
The current iteration of the bill, it staggers it. For first offenses, it doubles the fine, and anybody above a 1.8, we created what's called an aggravated first offense DUI. And if you are found guilty under that subsection, it would be a mandatory 2 days in jail or 20 hours of community service. Second offenses doubles the fine, 10 days in jail, mandatory 1 year of a 24/7 program, which is essentially mandating 1 year of sobriety. Third offense doubles stays as a misdemeanor, doubles the jail sentence from 60 to 120 days. It requires mandatory 1 year of probation, 24/7 for that portion of the supervised probation, but also essentially that 24/7 program would be longer than that because it would be tied to your driver's license, which your suspension on a third offense is usually 2 to 3 years. So the 24/7 program would carry longer than that. We escalated a fourth offense to a felony with a minimum mandatory 1 year and 1 day in jail. We created a vehicular homicide statute, which is an A felony. Essentially, if you take another's life while you're drinking and driving, and it has a minimum mandatory 3 years in jail. We escalated the first offense serious injury from under current law, it's a misdemeanor. It escalates the first offense for any kind of serious injury caused related to a DUI to a C felony with a minimum mandatory 1 year in jail. And then as far as penalties go, if you would get caught driving with a kid in your car on your second offense, minor in the car on a second offense DUI, it would be a C felony.
Could you explain what you mentioned, the 24/7 sobriety program? Could you tell us what that is, please?
The 24/7 sobriety program is something that's currently implemented from the Attorney General's office. However, under current use, it is used primarily as a condition of pretrial release, whereas if you're on a second or subsequent DUI, they will put you on this 24/7 program, which maintains your sobriety during the pendency of your court case.
And how does it do that? How does it maintain your sobriety?
There's two different ways it works, and in the current version of the bill, there's also a $1.2 million appropriation to buy what are called scram bracelets, which is essentially a bracelet that you put on your ankle, and it monitors whether or not you have alcohol in your system at any point in time of the day, whether you're driving or not. 24/7 program essentially works either with a scram bracelet, or if there is not a scram bracelet available, you have to go to law enforcement center twice a day and test, and you blow into what they call portable breath tests. There's an SD5 and SD2, and then there's another one, I don't remember the name of it. But if you don't have a bracelet on, if you are on the 24/7 program, you have to go to law enforcement center twice a day and blow. Typically once in the morning and once in the evening.
Representative Gruchella, you had a proposal of your own as to what should be done with people who drink and drive, particularly people who commit a first offense or who are caught for a first offense. And can you refresh my memory as to what that did and why you thought that was a good idea?
Well, when we started looking at this last year after the rash of alcohol-related fatalities, what we did is look around at different what works. And what we're doing in our country, not just North Dakota, isn't working. In fact, North Dakota has the highest rate of alcohol-related fatalities in the nation. It's the only state where they're going up instead of down. And in the United States, we're really not making that much progress. I've been in this for over 30 years, when I started in law enforcement and now in the legislature, and so things are getting worse. What we're doing is not working, and so we thought, well, what would make a difference? And the only thing we could come up with was looking at different countries where they have a lot less problem with this, foreign countries, and looked at what they're doing, and looked at their attack on the problem was by creating a deterrence. So we got really rash, and we threw out the idea that on a first offense, if you had 1 year revocation of your license, 30 days in jail, and a $5,000 fine, and that I think it would make a difference. I think our alcohol-related fatalities and our amount of drunk driving arrests would drop dramatically. And of course, we soon found out that we didn't have any hopes that those type of penalties were going to be instituted, but we were hoping to set the bar somewhere where they get raised.
Why did you believe that you had no chance to institute those types of penalties?
Well, that's a big, giant step. And North Dakota is traditionally very conservative, and it makes very baby steps with things. And so it turned out, of course, that that was the case. The bills were altered a lot, and Senator Armstrong did a lot of work on the first bill that came in, and then Ladd Erickson, State's Attorney from McLean County, also did a lot of work on the bills and some background. And now I think we're going to have a bill that'll pass, but I think we'll have a bill that won't have much of an impact. And the reason I say that is because right now the penalties for a first-time DUI was a B misdemeanor, 30 days in jail, $500 fine. The penalties on this new bill, the one that will get passed, are the same. It's a B misdemeanor. So I really don't think we're going to have that.
Unless you kill somebody, if I understand it correctly.
Yes. The penalties is for the second and third go up. But 2/3 of the DUIs that are arrested are first-timers. So I think in order to reduce the second and third-timers, you've got to start with the first-timers. And I think, as just about anybody in law enforcement will tell you, if you are on the first-time offense now, it's pretty routine to get that first one reduced, or else you'll get the minimum fine, $250 fine, and no days in jail. And I think by treating it that way, it's just kind of a minor thing the first time. Give them a pass on the first one almost. I don't think we're going to set the bar high enough to where it's going to have an impact.
One of the things that is not in the present bill is an option called the ignition interlock device. I wanted to know what you thought about that as an option as part of this legislation. Is it useful to require someone who's convicted of DUI to have an ignition interlock device in their vehicle?
Well, and part of the bill that we started with did have ignition interlocks in it, mandatorily. They're in the present law right now. A judge could require them. However, it's not being done. But Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, who is a leader in this area, contacted us initially and sent a representative out here and did some demonstrations and even testified on. There's about 17 states that have require ignition interlocks, and there's about 10 more that are looking at it right now in legislature. So it seems to be the thing, and that's what MAD wants to get instituted. Now the 24/7 program, which is presently in use in North Dakota, is a good program too, but it's kind of unique. There's just a couple of states that are doing it. So I guess either one is all right, but it's always after the fact, So I would rather see more upfront penalties.
Senator Armstrong, $5,000 and 30 days in the jug for a first-time offender. What do you think about that as a deterrent?
It sounds good. If you do the math based on last year's DUIs, it's 145,500 more days in jail, county jail. We have 16 major county jails. All of them are running between 95 and 120% capacity right now. We wouldn't have anywhere to put them. I mean, and Representative Gurchella said, I mean, it was brought in as a bold thing. I think in reality, people knew that that type of thing wasn't going, I mean, just mechanically it wouldn't work. When I got into this legislation, I think sometimes things just luckily happen, is one of the things we were trying to do and we were really conscious of doing, and whether we succeed or not, only time will tell, is to write the toughest law possible that can still get implemented on the ground level. And I think that is really an important key to this, because as Representative Gurchella said, there are, depending on where you live and what county you're in, right now, DUIs often get reduced. I mean, based on workloads, based on different prosecutors, based on different personalities. One of the biggest concerns with writing a piece of legislation like this is if you make it to a point where nobody's willing to enforce it because of the strain it's going to put on the local municipalities and things of that nature. So under the current version, and I should say just before I forget, under 1302, and we talked to the interlock people, there is a study in place to look at implementing that as, I mean, and we say this too much, and I don't know why it gets said so much, but as a tool to be used for, I mean, a tool in the toolbox as another mechanism to do it. One thing about North Dakota with interlock is it's unique, is that, I mean, we have the highest rate of multiple car owners, I think, in the country. And when you start getting into ag people and private businesses and small trucks, the difference between interlock is the car will not move if you fail with the breathalyzer test. The nice thing about 24/7 is it follows the person. So if you're sitting at your house at 8 a.m. in the morning and eating Cheerios, you're still not allowed to drink, otherwise you violate the program. So there are benefits to both, and I think if there's an ability to use both. In speaking with the interlock guy, one of the things I said is usually when we implement this, we do a grace period before the law goes into place, because there's a strong private-public partnership between the people who implement it and how they do it. And I think if it's capable to be utilized, it's a good thing. But even under the current bill 1302, if you use last year's numbers, we are going to and hopefully as time goes on, these DUIs go down. That's the intent of the whole legislation. But if you just use last year's numbers, we are going to increase county jail capacity by over 15,000 days in jail across the state of North Dakota. We're going to have over 2,500 people on bracelets for at least a year. So, I mean, there are some things in this bill that are really, really going to, I mean, that's a substantial enhancement to what is going on. And whether the first offense is enough of a deterrent and the second offense and those things move on. But that's a significant increase in both the severity of how we're treating the offense and also the resources and the capability of our local law enforcement to implement the program effectively.
I'd like to ask this question of both of you gentlemen. Do you think that the fault here lies with the judges in North Dakota? I mean, right now, a first offense is a Class B misdemeanor. You can put someone in jail for 30 days. You can fine them, $500? But this isn't being done. And whose fault is that?
Well, again, going back to, there are problems. You get some of the local counties and the local state's attorney, his cousin or his brother-in-law gets picked up, and you get into those kind of things in small jurisdictions. And so that's part of it. And once you start down that slippery slope and you start reducing things, then you're sunk. And some prosecutors are part-time in North Dakota. If somebody threatens them with a jury trial, they'll automatically reduce it or something, because for one thing, maybe the county can't afford it. And maybe the prosecutor is not qualified, and that happens a lot. They shouldn't be prosecuting. But again, I look at it, those are all excuses. If we really seriously want to do something about drunk driving, if we take it seriously in North Dakota, then we have to put some money up front. We'll have to fund the jails. We'll have to do something. There's no reason why we couldn't put some money in the bill itself for increased jail time or whatever, and find out if it'll work. There's a plan it was Montana that has it, and they reduced their jail time by 2/3 by putting people in a treatment facility versus putting it in the regular jail population. They thought that if you put them in the jail population, they learn how to steal or do other crimes. So it's better to put them isolated in a treatment facility, and they keep them there and monitor them, but it's a lot less expensive. So there are ways we could have do something with that, but the costs are what that really reduce lower the penalties. It's very expensive to try to attack the problem.
And do you think that the people in North Dakota are willing to pay the price? I mean, I'm thinking about your original proposal, a $5,000 fine, 30 days in jail for a first offender. I mean, obviously that would lead to a lot of DUI trials because people would not want to serve 30 days in jail, I imagine, so they would contest the charge. And if they're convicted, there'd have to be some place to put them. So I imagine we'd have to have a fair amount of money for jail space and for prosecutors and for what other attendant expenditures there are. Do you think that the folks in North Dakota are willing to do that, willing to pay for that sort of deterrence?
We could find out, because there are some of the people that I've been working with, some of the families that are talking initiated measure. So I don't know. Maybe we'll find that out.
What do you think about that, Senator Armstrong? First of all, do you think it's the judge's fault that we're not getting the hammer thrown at these folks? And also, do you think that this is such a priority amongst the taxpayers that they're willing to give money to this instead of, say, for example, education or human services?
Well, no, I don't think it's the judge's fault. I think a lot of times it's the way misdemeanor plea agreements typically work is the judge has very little impact on those, especially at the district court level. That's usually a negotiation through the prosecutor and the defense attorney. Oftentimes they're submitted in writing, which is called a Rule 43 plea agreement. Resources are fungible, and I'll just talk about where I'm from right now. During this legislative session, we're adding 2 new judges in the Northwest District. We've been talking about conveyor belt justice, and hearings that used to take 40 minutes are now taking up 10 minutes just because of the increase in everything going on. It's civil, oil and gas, criminal, minor, major. I mean, all of those things. I think it's a conglomerate of a lot of things. Turnover in law enforcement. I will tell you, as a criminal defense attorney, the single biggest predicator as to whether or not I can win and or reduce a DUI trial is simply based on the number of years of experience of the law enforcement officer who conducted the arrest. And the reason is because DUIs are a pretty average occurrence, unfortunately, for a law enforcement officer. So after they do, several of them or 10 of them, they get the process down real well. But when you start having new turnover of law enforcement agents on a daily basis, the mechanics of how they work, if they screw things up, defense attorneys have a minefield of problems they need to negotiate through. Combine that with a state's attorney whose caseload is 140% of what it was. But we don't know what the cost is to do something like this. There has never been a fiscal note appropriated to what it would cost to put. And I don't think 30 days is realistic, but even if you do a 10-day first offense minimum mandatory sentence, and the concern you run into when you do something like that before you extrapolate out how to actually enforce it is, quite frankly, I think it would have the opposite effect. I think you would see more reckless drivings, not less, and it wouldn't get to the root of the issue under the current system of how it works right now.
Representative Gruchella, a 30-day jail sentence and a $5,000 fine, how remarkable would that be in the United States, and how remarkable would it be in other countries as a penalty?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Dale. We did quite a bit of research. I don't know if I've got it all here, but the fine of $5,000 wasn't the highest in the nation, and the jail time was right in Louisiana's got that right now. The fine, there's a couple states that have $7,500 on a first offense. So it wasn't the high. Wouldn't put us in the highest in the nation in any of those categories. We want to not stay the highest, but get up there toward the top.
How about the jail sentence?
The jail sentence, again, we set it at 30 days, and that would not have been the highest in the nation either. No.
How would this compare to, I mean, European countries, for example? There's a number of them that have very stiff penalties for DUI.
Yeah, I've just got a few examples here. If you get picked up in Malaysia, that you're jailed, and if you're married, your wife is jailed too. South Africa, you get a 10-year prison sentence and the equivalent of a $10,000 fine. Turkey, drunk drivers are taken 20 miles outside of town by police and are forced to walk back under escort.
Really?
Uh-huh. Australia, the names of the drivers are sent to the local newspaper and printed under the heading, "He's drunk and in jail." Costa Rica, they remove the plates from the car immediately. So there are there's some of them that
is there any where they're flogged or anything like that?
El Salvador, your first offense is your last execution by firing squad. So, there are some. Bulgaria is the second offense is an execution. So, some countries take it kind of seriously.
Whoa. Well, I'm kind of speechless here. How do you think that the present bill, which is it might be voted on as soon as tomorrow, how do you think that the present bill, Senator Armstrong, is going to be received by the public as a proper response to some of the horrific accidents that we saw last year?
Well, with regards to the accidents, and that's where the bill really gets beefed up, is with the offenses for injuring other people. And as I explained it in committee, and I think Representative Gurchella is there with that part of it, is it's like playing Russian roulette with a loaded weapon. And the answer is when you're drunk and you're driving a car, I mean, the reality of that situation is you're playing Russian roulette with other people's lives. And we're going to come down on those things. It's hard to talk about some of those things because we're talking about Montana, we're talking about Malaysia. My wife's from Norway. I can tell you about the cultural impact of drinking and driving in Norway, and it's a multifaceted approach. One, they have significantly less trepidation towards a 16-year-old having a glass of wine at the dinner table in Norway than we do here. They have a different relationship with alcohol. Secondly, they have one of the best public transportation systems in the world, even in the small rural communities, which is an aspect to all of this. And third, it's been culturally ingrained in them over the last 30 years as to it is treated as a major crime. Also in Norway, which is a little Fourth Amendment issue, is they fine you based on your income. But the reality is we can go to South Dakota, and this 24/7 program, when implemented widely, works. South Dakota, since 2008, when they have implemented their 24/7 program in a manner very similar to this bill, they've had a 17% decrease in DUIs. In fairness, they had a ramp up in prosecution in 2006 and 2007. So 2006, 2007 are their highest numbers ever of DUIs. But even if you'd extrapolate that out to like 2005, they have a 12 to 15% decrease in DUIs. I don't care if you're working on DUIs or any other piece of legislation. If in a 2-year swing we can get something along those lines, that's a successful piece of legislation.
Representative Gurchella, how do you think that this bill is going to be received by the public as a proper response?
Well, it's progress, and I think I've had contact with some of the families again that we started out with, and they're some of them are not very happy. They would like to see more done.
We've been speaking to Representative Ed Gurchella. He's a Democrat from Fargo and a former North Dakota highway patrolman. And we also have with us Senator Kelly Armstrong, a Republican from Dickinson, a member of the Senate Transportation Committee who has been one of the leaders in crafting a new bill to penalize drunken driving. And thank you, gentlemen, for coming. And we will be coming to you in the next half hour with a credit union show. We're going to be speaking about cooperatives, and we're going to be speaking about the credit union's role in the cooperative system.